Joe Benson here with another Uncle Joe's Garage exclusive opportunity for you. It's the NHRA Nitro Campout Weekend brought to you by our friends at Mike Thompson RV Superstores. Enter now at thesoundla.com for your chance to camp out all weekend at the Circle K NHRA Winter Nationals, November 9th through the 12th. You can camp in an RV parked right in the finish line just for you. You got bitchin' tickets, free food, and all the heart-pumping, earthquake-shattering NHRA drag racing that you can handle. The Circle K NHRA Winter Nationals at Auto Club Raceway at Pomona. Tell them your Uncle Joe sent you. Hey, here we are inside your Uncle Joe's Garage with support from Mike Thompson RV. And let me run down a couple things on our guest today. Just a few bands. Led Zeppelin, The Who, U2, Queen, Pink Floyd, Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks, The Police, Bruce Springsteen, Rod Stewart, Stevie Ray Vaughan, The Rolling Stones, The Doors, Leonard Skinner, Alice Cooper, Elton John, Clapton, Billy Joel, Marley, Bob and Rita, Bowie, and Neal Preston. When he's got spare time, he comes to Uncle Joe's Garage. Neal Preston, famed photographer. Great to have you with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, before we get into the meat of the matter here, which involves, since we're in a garage, cars, you have a new book. Finally, you're putting a book out. Finally, a compilation of, well, I assume there's going to be a few photographs in it.
There's going to be one or two photographs in it. It is my body of work collection. Music photos, since I've done stuff other than music, but mainly it's my history of music photography from when I was in high school through this morning. The publishing date is not till October 1st of this year, but it's going to be fantastic. My goal is to make the best music photography book that's ever been done. The title is Neal Preston, Exhilarated and Exhausted.
Which is quite descriptive.
Yeah, because that's how I feel every day, and that's how I want the reader to feel after you go through this 332 pages of Led Zeppelin and this one and that one, and read the text, which is not just stories about the pictures. It's really about how I do my job on a day-to-day basis, how you deal with the stress, the personalities that you have to deal with, you name it.
Let's make a point of that. We'll start things out with a question. We'll get to some of the other stuff in the garage, but we're going down a path right now I find fascinating. People would say, you work with all these bands, you're on stage with all these bands. What's it like, really, to be with a band on tour? Is it all ice cream cones and unicorns? There are no ice cream cones and one or two unicorns, but the fact of the matter is it's extremely stressful. The bigger the band, the higher the stress level, obviously. And you don't get a lot of sleep. Deadlines are sacrosanct, and they're constant. The traveling, whether you're Led Zeppelin on the Starship or REO Speedwagon on a tour bus in Salina, Kansas, the traveling will take it out of you, and you have to do your job. So rarely have I ever thought, wow, I'm on stage with Led Zeppelin. It's more like, wow, I better get that shot because Jimmy's going to want to see it tomorrow, or Peter Grant's going to want to see it. It's as stressful a job as, probably the only other job that's more stressful would be being a roadie, I'd say. I have some experience with that. We don't want to go down that path. So you started, did you play a musical instrument when you were growing up, or was the camera the first thing you did?
The camera was the first thing I ever got. My first camera I got when I was about 13, probably around the time I got my first guitar, but my guitar playing prowess kind of leveled off at 16 years old, and whereas photography came more naturally to me, so I never pursued music as a career.
But you're dealing with...
I wouldn't be sitting here if I did.
Or you'd be sitting in my chair, because that's how it goes with the talent thing.
I'd be behind one of those cameras.
Yeah, well, We may have to talk to them about that. Let's just for a moment here, these things you've described, you're not a member of the band if you're working with a crew. If you're working with a band like that. Led Zeppelin is legendary for being pretty much the high mark or low mark on behavior, on stage, off stage, and all the biggest band, the most controlled, the most difficult group of people for good reason, to get in with. And you were right there with them for, God knows, 73 and how many tours? And
73, 75, 77, and then Nebworth.
how did you fall into this? Did you owe Peter Grant a vast sum of money or something? And,
I owe Peter Grant a vast thank you every day. Let's see, where should I begin? I had a small retainer deal with Atlantic Records in the early 70s.
Okay.
And through that deal, I had been introduced to the band just as another photographer from the label, and had shot some stuff in 72, beginning of 73. Their publicist was a guy named Danny Goldberg.
of course.
Now, Danny, I knew from when I was in high school, because I got in the business early when I was in high school, and I lived in New York. I grew up in New York. And Danny was a rock writer for, well, Circus Magazine in its earlier incarnation, which was called Hullabaloo Magazine.
Yeah, those are the days.
So I knew Danny for years and years since I was like 17. After 73, like I said, I'd done some work on the band for Atlantic around that time. Then they had the launch party for the label Swan Song at the Bel Air Hotel, which the thing I remember from that party is that Clifford Irving was there as a guest.
Good heavens.
And the guy who wrote the faux Howard Hughes autobiography. And I mentioned offhandedly to Danny, I said, hey, if you guys go out next year, I heard you might, if you need a tour photographer, count me in or give me a chance, whatever. Mm-hmm. Never dreaming that 3 months later, the phone would ring and Danny said, you still want that job as Zeppelin's tour photographer? And it took me a 1/10 of a billionth of a nanosecond to say yes. And the following month, in 75, I was official. They had never brought anyone on the road with them. And I was the guy that they brought and gave complete access to. And the reason they wanted someone was because, and Danny's told me this recently, because the Rolling Stones would be getting all the press and all the celebrities coming to see the Stones and this and that. And Zeppelin were far bigger.
Oh, yeah.
They were the biggest band in the land. They had the swagger. They knew it, but they weren't getting the column inches.
Yeah.
So they decided to bring a photographer, and Danny told me that there was no question that I was the guy. He said all the other rock and roll photographers were insane. And Jimmy had seen some of my pictures and liked them, and
I must say you've been responsible for some of the most iconic most iconic photographs, but especially with Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, Jimmy Page drinking the Jack Daniels and Robert Plant holding the dove in his hand, both of which are great stories. But Danny said you were close to their age. If you couldn't have shot the great pictures, you would not have been hired.
Yeah.
But you had to have the personality to mesh with these guys because they were a very cloistered bunch. And, it's like the mafia. Once you're in, you're in, and once you're out, you're out. And Peter Grant just had a street smarts sixth sense about me.
As the manager of the band, he was a very large, 6'5", 6'6", 300 and some pounds.
Oh, he was probably tipping close to 400. Uh-huh. I used to hide behind him on stage. Well, sometimes you hide behind an amp or whatever, but Peter was always there on the side of the stage, and I would just go peek around him. So, but Peter was very, very, very good to me and trusted me, which is everything, especially with a bunch of guys like that. I mean, a rock tour has its own personality, and that personality is different than the very strong personalities that are within the band on the tour. It has its own personality, and that the personality of a rock tour can turn on a dime, given a bad review, poor ticket sales, the drummer getting the clap, all those, an interview gone awry, anything. So you have to be your antenna have to be up, and it's like life. There are ups and downs.
This is also a band that was renowned for being rascals and all kinds of behavior, probably boredom and spurring some of it, as opposed to just pure debauchery.
Speaking for myself, boredom spurred a lot of that kind of behavior.
So were you left out of the room when these things were going on? Did you experience some of this, or did it affect you in a way that...
Now he's getting to the tough stuff. I have been in the room for a lot of it. I have instigated a lot of it. I have experienced it. I haven't necessarily photographed a lot of it, or if I have, they're not photos you're ever going to see. But I do have a great photo of Robin Zander getting handcuffed and brought off to jail because we had a party at a hotel in Lakeland or Orlando, I can't remember. And Cheap Trick was playing with Heart, and I think there was a third band on the bill. We had a big party that night at the hotel, and it got out of control. Someone called the cops. We're all really drunk. And Robin Zander's standing there, and these Florida cops come in, and there's a lady cop, and she's wearing a name tag or a badge that says Officer Beaver. So I can see this happening in slow motion. So Zander says to her, I wouldn't touch that beaver with a 10-foot pole. Boom! And I have this great picture of him being cuffed, and in the background you see 3 other cops holding someone down. I don't remember who that person was, but stuff happens.
I grew up with the guys from Cheap Trick. I believe every moment of this.
Oh, I have the photos to prove it.
The name of the book is Exhilaration?
No, Neal Preston, Exhilarated and Exhausted.
Exhilarated and Exhausted, coming out in October.
Yep.
And there are going to be some photographs in it.
There are going to be many, many, many photographs, some of the famous ones, and a lot that people haven't seen.
Well, I guess a number of the things I have in my list, people probably haven't seen it for very good reasons.
No, it's because of sheer volume, first of all. I mean, there's lots of reasons. It's funny that people have asked me that. How come, if this is such a good picture, or you have such a good picture stash, how come you never showed it to anyone? You don't always, give it all up at once. You dole it out.
You've had some great experiences, though, and you've lived through some things as well. Next time, I want you to talk about The Who.
You got it. My favorite band.
Likewise. Neal Preston with us here inside your Uncle Joe's garage. Hey, here we are inside your Uncle Joe's garage, and I know you haven't been inside the garage yet, but I got some great news for you. We've created a mobile version of the Uncle Joe's garage thanks to our friends at Mike Thompson RV Superstores. Like they say, don't miss a moment. And don't miss the mobile Uncle Joe's garage when it comes to a location near you. I'll be looking for you.